Time for the newspapers at 8:47, and we'll start with The Guardian. It has, well, they've all got the Princess of Wales on the front, actually. The news that, in The Guardian, that she's undertaking chemotherapy.
And the Mail quotes Princess Catherine saying, "I am well and getting stronger every day. I'm going to be OK."
The Times leads with the diagnosis as well, and that now familiar picture.
Kate reveals cancer shock is the headline on the front of the Mirror.
And The Express tells of Catherine's personal shock at her diagnosis.
Well, it is the biggest concern for everybody, I think, at the moment. With us now, royal broadcaster Rafe Hayden-Manku and showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Right, what do we look for first? It's Stephanie, I mean, it's incredible, actually, the coverage in the press and the fact that everywhere you go at the moment, you must have been through this last night, everybody just wants to talk about it.
Definitely, I think in most newsrooms, the royal family, and over the past few months, that is what has been dominating all of our editorial meetings. But yesterday there was just that tone. It was like when the Queen died, there was that day of just like feeling tension and just waiting to hear what Catherine has to say. But I think, you know, most editors are breathing a sigh of relief now because, you know, over the past few days we've had to fill our front pages with either talking about stupid conspiracy theories or having a picture of Kate out and about, you know, just drip feeding the public on this stuff. So now it's actually come from Kate. The whole public can be on the same page as the royal family, which is refreshing.
Do you think, Rafe, it puts to bed some of the nastiness? Sandy's been in touch. Hi, Sandy, who says, "I'm so glad to feel I'm part of the GBNEWS family who've been so caring and not indulged in the awful social media hounding of our princess. She's given so much of herself to all of us, and she, in ill health, was not given a moment's peace."
Absolutely right, and I hope that all those who contributed to that terrible period we've had over the last few weeks does feel genuinely ashamed. And it's not just social media influencers, you know. I was saying from the outset on the media, leave the Princess of Wales alone, and instead we've had from, you know, quite respectable news channels and elsewhere in America and so forth, the most outrageous stuff. John Oliver, who has hosts a chat show in America, the Stephen Colbert, another late-night talk show. I hope they're all hanging their sheds in shame. And sort of feverish speculation and these wild conspiracy theories have really brought to my mind just the worst excesses of the Diana years. We've just gone through exactly that sort of period.
And can you imagine how frightening that must have been for William?
Yeah.
To sort of almost see that sort of frenzy happening again.
Definitely. I have been thinking about Prince William a lot and just how through all of this he still managed to keep up with public appearances, knowing that's going on with his family life, and still being able to maintain somewhat a positive relationship with the press as well, despite what he's gone through in his past. Like, I was interviewing Ingrid Seward earlier this week and she said the same thing. She said, it reminds me of the Diana era, and it's kind of scary that almost 20 years on, or over 20 years on, that nothing really has been learnt here.
No, well, certainly, I mean, perhaps in the UK, but certainly not in the States.
Well, that's, you know, the difference was, back then, it was the British media who were fueling all of this. Now it's places like TMZ and these American channels and networks. That's been a bit of a difference. But, you know, we have to say the British media don't emerge from this with their heads held high to a great...
What frightens me is that we thought the British media particularly had agreed to sort of treat the royal family with some degree of dignity. But the vile things that are being said on social media seem to be guiding the mainstream press towards what they want to talk about.
Because it's almost too much to ignore, though. That's the thing. That was how big it got. It's like, that's how the power of social media is now. It's almost like it does drip free to what makes to the newspapers now, because you can't ignore it. And then it gathers strength when you get more people who are quite influential, whether it's an influential presenter or influencer, giving more weight behind it.
And the other big difference, of course, is that we're now in a very different media landscape. We're in the world of 24-hour rolling news, which we weren't in the 1990s, and now it's no longer just newspapers. Every newspaper has a website, and there's always a demand for more and more content, and so, you know, people are just desperate to put stuff online, and that's why you're getting more attention given to, in the past, which were people who were simply cranks who would have been ignored.
Yeah, well, amidst all of this furore, she's come out, she's told us what's going on, in as much detail as she wishes to. but finishing it all off, Rafe, and it really struck me last night, with actually a message of support to others. And I think that was absolutely profound.
Yeah, it was a magnificent speech that she delivered. It was courageous in terms of her own condition, but it was also very caring. And it really reminded me exactly of the King's own speech, his message, where he actually encouraged other men. And we know that there was a huge increase in the number of searches online for prostate cancer and so forth. And so we can only hope that some good does come out of all of this. And I think it's a lot of people who are suffering from cancer will take hope from the fact that the Princess of Wales has said that, and also, of course, that she's so optimistic about her future, because, of course, we have to say, the word chemotherapy for people of a certain generation, myself included, has very, very bad connotations.
Yes.
But it's actually an umbrella term for any drug treatment that kills cancer cells. And it can be the traditional way of having intravenous infusions, but it can also be far less intrusive things like simply taking tablets at home. It's a very different world to when cancer really was a death sentence.
Yeah.
Now it's not at all necessarily.
And you
that.
mentioned the King's message there. One of the things he went to a great extent of saying was that he had received and read so many of these wonderful messages and cards from members of the public, and that it mattered to him.
It does. I think, when you are facing a health battle, you've got two decisions. Either you go down the road where you want to be negative, or you cling on to every piece of support, piece of love that you get. Happiness is good for the bones. Happiness is good for health. I know it sounds cheesy, but when you're in that situation, that is what you need. It's all about your mindset. And that's what I loved what Kate said. It's all about her being on this road to recovery, mentally, spiritually and physically.
And, of course, also she needs this after the last few weeks when there have been so much negativity, so many silly media storms that must have grated on her. To know that actually the British public are behind her fully, I think must surely lift her spirits.
And anyone who wants to be negative now has got to have a nerve, because, as she said, this is, for her, it's about getting better, it's about protecting her children.
And it's about privacy and time to heal and go through the process without the constant media intrusion.
Which I found was interesting in Harry and Meghan's statement that they put out. They did mention that word privacy, and I think obviously that's something they've always been trying to say that they needed, and more than ever they actually realise this is what Kate needs right now.
Yeah, well, I did think it was interesting that, well, thank heavens they released a statement.
Yeah.
You can't knock them for that.
No, it was well worded.
It was well worded. Right, thank you both. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Right, now let's catch up with the weather. Here's Alex Deacon.